it would affect the Leafs. If the Sabres got Connor McDavid, we'd have to see him night in and night out. So shut your mouth. It affects the Leafs. I don't care. Let's just talk some trade rumors that I've been hearing. Now, obviously, with the Leafs injuries, there's been a whole bunch of rumors about centerman coming into Toronto, and we need to fix this. And let's just step back just for a second. Here is our centerman. If JVR works out, let's just list James Van. There it is again. I honestly, somebody just take me out. If you'd just like to tweet at me, yell at me, and tell me that James Van Riemsdyk is his name, not John Van Riemsdyk, I'd be happy to oblige you. Let's just list James Van Riemsdyk as a center. Let's say we have James Van Riemsdyk, Nazem Kadri, Tyler Bozak, Dave Bolland, Trevor Smith, Jay McClement. Is that 6 centermen? 7 centermen? Why do we need to trade for another centerman? Now, I know Trevor Smith isn't exactly your prototypical playoff, like, man, I want my fourth line center in the playoffs to be Trevor Smith so that, he can go out and score us a big goal. I know that's not likely the scenario that's playing out in your mind. But do we really want to bring in a guy like Steve Ott from Buffalo? We know it's more than likely that he's available. He has a little bit longer of a contract than I'd want to play with, but Steve Ott could come in. I'd see him. He's a fourth line guy in my mind. Maybe a third line. I don't know. Seeing him, you look at Dave Bolland, you look at Steve Ott. Do you not say, well, Dave Bolland's just a better Steve Ott? Do we not have the better guy? Why do we want Steve Ott when Dave Bolland is on our team? And I know Dave Bolland's injured, but Steve Ott, to me, there's no need for him. We don't need another third line center. That's Jay McClement. I'm more than comfortable with Jay McClement's role as a third, fourth line centerman. He can pitch in with some goals. He does the right thing. He rarely makes a mistake defensively, and he can kill penalties, and he wins big face-offs. I'm fine with where we're at centerman-wise. There's been talks with Florida, but honestly, who do we want? Is anybody out there want Marcel Gottsch? No. Nobody wants Marcel Gottsch. The only centerman on the Florida Panthers I want is Alexander Barkov, which that's not going to happen. So let's just not talk to the Florida Panthers. There was a crazy rumor out there that they wanted Kulikov. Why we'd want Kulikov is beyond me. Defensively, I think it would just be a lateral move anyways. But let's just not talk to the Florida Panthers. There's not much there that's available that anyone really wants. At least at center ice. Sam Gagner from Edmonton, that's an interesting one. I look at the team that Sam Gagner's been on. They're a losing team. Not only is this particular team a losing team, it's an organization built around losing. Literally, they finished the last place 3 years in a row. Well, 3 years in a row, they had the first overall pick. They weren't completely last one of those years. They won the lottery and moved up a spot. But why would you want a guy who's never won anything in his career to come in and potentially replace one of the guys that we have right now, which I don't know who that would even be? Sam Gagner, yes, and it's not like a player can't go from a losing atmosphere, move into a winning atmosphere, and completely change his game. But to me, in Edmonton, he's been completely inconsistent. He's not good defensively. He doesn't fit Randy Carlyle's system, and I don't know why we would want to bring in a player who's small. Another small centerman? Are you serious? Leave your tiny centers at home. Don't suggest that we trade for Sam Gagner anymore. He's not the guy the Leafs need. He's not the guy Randy Carlyle wants, I could tell you that. And he's also not the guy that the Leafs need. Now, if we're talking bringing Nail Yakupov to the Leafs, just stop. I don't want to trade Jake Gardiner for Nail Yakupov. He might be great. Whatever. What we'd have to give up for him, including Jake Gardiner, just isn't worth it. I think that he would ruin the chemistry that we have in the locker room. We don't need Nail Yakupov. Let's stop talking about trades with the Oilers, because the Edmonton Oilers are not a good team. Just like, remember when we were trading away Matt? We tried forever. Oh, let's trade Matt Stajan. Oh, let's trade. We traded all these guys to Calgary, like Lee Stempniak and guys from the previous era that we just tried dumping anywhere we could. We tried getting rid of these guys because, like Nick Antropov, because they were losers. They had lost for so long. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying that those individuals you're such a loser. I'm not saying that. They haven't experienced winning in so long that something happens. I've been a part of losing teams before, and it's miserable. I can't imagine losing for 6-7 years in a row where your team is just a bottom team, and the expectations are that you will suck. I look at one example. Best example I can think of is Steve Weiss going from Florida to Detroit. In Steve Weiss's career, he has made the playoffs how many times? One time. Steve Weiss has made the playoffs one time. What happened in those playoffs? The Florida Panthers lost in the first round. Okay, so Steve Weiss has been to the playoffs once. He's been in a losing atmosphere his entire career. He goes to Detroit. Has he fit in well in Detroit or no? Has he maybe suffered from the fact that he's played in so many different systems, played for so many different coaches, and has played on so many losing teams that he cannot figure his life out right now? In 16 games, he's got 2 goals and an assist, and he's a -3 on the Red Wings. The Red Wings are tied for second place in the Eastern Conference, and Steve Weiss can't figure out his life. And that's not to say that it can't turn around for him. Personally, I don't know why at this point in the game where the Leafs sit, you'd want to bring in a guy who's never experienced winning once. And I'm not even talking about the Cup. Let's just talk about a guy who's won a playoff round. How about that? Let's only talk about trade rumors with guys that have won playoff rounds. You know, interesting enough, we talked about Steve Ott on the Buffalo Sabres, and I'm trying to think back to a time where Steve Ott was an important factor in the playoffs. That's what I'm trying to think of right now. When was the last time that Steve Ott was an important part in the playoffs? We have to go all the way back to 2007, 2008, where he had a whopping 2 goals and an assist in the playoffs. He's really not been much of a performer in the playoffs. Obviously, he went to the Western Conference Finals. Other than that one visit, he hasn't been to the playoffs since 08-09. And so, in my mind, it's kind of the same deal. He's been losing for a while. And he's a player that I wouldn't be as concerned with as far as the losing goes, but I say let's bring guys in that have won. Let's bring guys in that have moved on in the playoffs, that have done well in the playoffs. Because we are a playoff team. We know we're a playoff team. Let's not kid ourselves that it's going to be a dogfight for the playoffs. We need to get back to that mindset that we had in the early 2000s when we said, you know what, not only are we a playoff team, we're going to build our team to win in the playoffs, not to win in the regular season, not to just finish with the President's Trophy or close to it or win the division, whatever it is. Who cares where the Leafs finish as long as we're in the top 8? Let's build a team that is ready and geared for the playoffs, a team that could win us a cup, a team that can at least win a few rounds. Give us some hope as we move forward that this team is a winning team. Look for the players that have won. To close out the show, we're going to take a couple, just one question and one comment. We don't have a ton of time left, but Justin from Michigan, he wants to know what I think will happen to our captain at the end of the season, at the trade deadline. And now that Kessel's locked up, what's your opinion on him and his play as well? Dion Phaneuf, he kind of made the big mistake early on in the season, actually in training camp, when Phil Kessel said, you know what? I'm not going to negotiate a deal once the season starts. The timer started for the Leafs. They had to get a deal done. There's no way that the Leafs could have let Phil Kessel go unsigned through to the next year and just cross their fingers and hope that he would sign there. We saw what happened to other teams when they tried doing that, i.e. Ryan Suter, i.e. Zach Parise. We saw what happened to teams, and they got screwed. And so the Leafs had to guarantee it. Whereas Dion Phaneuf said, oh, yeah, I mean, it's no big deal. Like, I'll negotiate my contract all year. Like, it's fine. I'm not in a huge rush. Like, I just want to kind of see how I'm doing. And now some of that may have been an attempt to say, you know, I need to have a better season. Maybe if I'm 40 games in and I'm having a better season than I was last year, I'm going to get a little bit more money. At the same time, if he's not having as good of a season, is it to his disadvantage? Absolutely. And it's also to his disadvantage because the Leafs are in no rush to sign Dion Phaneuf. They don't need to. I think that maybe over a little bit after Christmas, you'll probably hear more talk start to spark up. I've heard, here and there, like, hey, the Leafs and Dion Phaneuf are talking. Essentially, it just seems like they're kicking tires. They're probably, hey, here's our number right now where we stand, and Phaneuf says, here's my number where I stand, and I think that Phaneuf wants $7 million, and the Leafs probably would like to lock him up for more like $6 million. And as far as where I think he stands in comparison to other number ones, I don't think that he's a $7 million guy, but you might have to pay him that way. It's just kind of the cost of doing business right now, and especially with the salary cap going up, the Leafs may have to give him the deal that he wants. Because his play, well, he hasn't been scoring goals, he hasn't been super involved offensively. I think that maybe because he's focused more defensively, and he's actually made some pretty spectacular plays. It's the little things. It's the lifting up of the sticks of players right in front of the net as they're getting a one-time pass in the power play where a goal is averted because of a small play that he did, just because of a flick of a wrist that he was able to play defense on a guy. He's in the right position at the right time. He's been much better in that we haven't noticed him as much this year. It was just illuminated in the playoffs that Dion Phaneuf was caught flat-footed a couple times, and he made some glaring errors in the playoffs against the Boston Bruins. And while he did have, I think he had a good series, there were some obvious mistakes. And so now you're seeing Dion Phaneuf play a more conservative game where he's not making any mistakes. Not doing a ton offensively, but do the Leafs really need Phaneuf to be this offensive mastermind scoring 15 to 20 goals a year? I don't think so. Especially with the oncoming of Morgan Rielly and Cody Franson in the last year, and then Jake Gardiner on the third pairing. The Leafs have offensively minded defensemen, and in my opinion, Dion Phaneuf serves himself much more to play the balanced game. He'll come out looking like a guy who the Leafs can trust and will sign for long term. Because I think the captaincy and the fact that with his leadership, he's done a very good job. He has matured into that role. Was he ready for it when he got it? No. Dion Phaneuf was not that great of a captain when he first got the C. He was a younger guy, recently came onto the Leafs, and I think that it may have been premature, but in that prematurity, the Leafs have been able to groom him to be a pretty good captain. Randy Carlyle has done a good job empowering him to be a leader of that team and a leader of that dressing room, along with Lupul and along with Kessel and along with some of the other veterans of that team. And Clarkson's definitely come in and has allowed that team to have that winning attitude and leadership that somebody who's been to the finals, and David Bolland, somebody who's won the cup before, it changes the dynamic of a locker room. And I think that Dion Phaneuf, he will sign with the Maple Leafs, and he'll probably sign for 7 or 8 years. If he signs for 8, I think he may get less. He may get more, like 6 or maybe even 5.5. But I still think, unfortunately, he's going to get closer to $7 million. Last thing that we have on the show, just wanted to read one comment from @JohnTKemp. He says, "Hey Mark, I'm a Blue Jackets fan and enjoy listening to hockey shows. I recently started listening to LeafsCast. Nice job." We appreciate the compliment, John. Keep on listening. The Leafs are going to be playing the Columbus Blue Jackets soon enough. We'll be doing a pregame preview for that game. We hope that by we, I don't know why I always say we. It's only me. At least at this point. Actually, something really exciting that I'm going to share with you just about some things that have been going on with the show before I close it off is just some... I've been in contact with some different people that do other podcasts for other teams and that work at some different radio stations and are in tune with what different teams around the league have been doing. And so we have some different interviews scheduled over the next couple weeks to be able to bring some different voices onto the team. Really, I mean, I consider myself a fan and somewhat of I don't even want to use the word expert because it just makes me sound like a douche. But we'll just say, okay, whatever. I'm an expert on the Toronto Maple Leafs as it is in regards to the average fan. We'll just say that. I do a podcast. I waste my time doing this stuff because I think it's a lot of fun and I love following the Leafs. So that's where I'll place myself. But there's a lot of other guys that cover their teams. They're in the locker room, and they just know the ongoings of other teams throughout the NHL and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so I'm going to have those guys on the show. We're going to have great conversations and do some interviews with them. And so definitely keep that in mind as we go forward. That